everyone, I'm Ryan from Fireside Knicks with my friend and co-host Dylan Backer. And earlier this morning, Carmelo Anthony announced that he's retiring officially. Now, not that Melo had been in the league in the last year. I don't think he played for any team this year. But, he was still probably looking for opportunities. There were some sort of like, hey, could he come back to the Knicks? Unfortunately, there wasn't really a fit for him, I guess, on this roster. Whether there was or wasn't is a completely different conversation. But, one of the things that, I think we can finally just sit back and talk about is just reflect on his career, right? And reflect on his time with the New York Knicks. Obviously, that era of New York Knicks basketball has plenty of highs and plenty of lows. There's a lot that went on in that era. There's a lot you could, point at the organization for. Some people pointed at Carmelo Anthony for, but whatever it may be, Carmelo Anthony is arguably the best New York Knick that we've had in the turn of the century, right? In the 2000s, 2010s, 2020s, whatever you want to count it. I don't know how many players can say they've accomplished what Carmelo's accomplished as a Knick, right? He kind of looking at his numbers here, he transformed from a guy who, in an era where obviously three-point shooting wasn't as prevalent to one of the best, outside perimeter threats in the league. Obviously, his mid-range shot was amazing. This was a guy who just knew how to score the basketball, right? And there's definitely a lot to reflect on with his career. But before I get carried away here, Dylan, how are you doing today? And, tell me a little bit about Carmelo Anthony. Tell me a little bit about his time with the New York Knicks and how you felt, when he was here.
Right. So, like you said, Melo retired, 19-year career. That's amazing for longevity and stuff like that. He was always around. Like you said, kind of stinks he didn't get the proper opportunity this season. He kind of was just sitting around hoping to get that opportunity, and it had to end up waiting until after the season was over and almost into the NBA Finals for him to finally, hang it up and say it's over. But, his career was decorated, man. Looking at his stuff here, he's an NBA 75 member, 75th anniversary team, 10-time All-Star, 6-time All-NBA, 3-time Olympic gold medalist, a scoring champion in 2013 with the Knicks, and he was 9th on the all-time scoring list. He just definition of pure score. Simple as that. Like you said, when he was with Denver, obviously three-point shooting wasn't so prevalent, but, he was more focused on just scoring mid-range and inside. And then he came to the Knicks and became an elite perimeter scorer, all-around three-level threat on scoring aspect. So when, his Knicks time, like you said, ups and downs. There were great seasons where we made the playoffs, and I think in 2013 year he won the scoring title. They were the second seed, only made it to the second round, unfortunately, but they, had a good season. And then had some pretty bad down years after that. Like 2014 to 2017 were just not good years for the New York Knicks. 2016, we thought maybe they would get back into relevance when they got Derrick Rose and Joakim Noah to play alongside Carmelo Anthony, and it just did not work. It just didn't work out. Didn't make the postseason. One of the worst teams in the NBA. And then started the rebuild once he left. Once he left, it was official to begin that rebuilding process. And then, had some bad years after that, but now the Knicks are back into relevancy, just this is getting more focused on Carmelo Anthony. Just, his time as a Knick was great, man. It was overall a very decorated career, very good, like you said, one of the best Knicks really ever in this century, one of the best Knicks ever, period, but definitely possibly the best in this century, so just looking at that, it's a good send-off for him. It's good that he was able to retire, on his own. It wasn't kind of just forced into retirement. No, he was able to just, say, all right, my time's done. Nobody's picking me up, but I think my time is done. And in the video, he kind of said all right, now it's time for my legacy to be handed off to my son. And he's and his son will hopefully carry that legacy, hopefully into a good NBA career one day, and we'll just have to see for that. But just to kind of wrap up my point, just it's a happy Knicks career for him. It's a happy Knicks day. Obviously, it's like we said, wasn't all sunshine and flowers with Melo. Not everything was amazing with Melo, but there was a lot more good than bad. I think everyone can agree with that, and I think at this rate, we got to say the man is a Hall of Famer. I know he doesn't have a ring or an MVP, but, he's a very decorated player, one of the best scorers really of all time. And I don't think you can hold this guy out of the Hall of Fame. I think this guy has to be a basketball Hall of Famer. The way I see it, if Tracy McGrady is a Hall of Famer, Carmelo Anthony is a first ballot Hall of Famer. That's the way I see it, but what do you think about that?
Yeah, I'm gonna again, I think there is a trend of I think you're much better at trying to listen to other people's arguments and, understand all viewpoints. if you don't think Carmelo Anthony's a first ballot Hall of Famer, you're a freaking idiot. You don't know the game of basketball, and you should just not watch the sport anymore. You should retire. Go. Baseball is a good sport. Football is a pretty good sport too. If you're into playoff hockey, there are plenty of other sports for you to follow. If you want to sit here and comment, well, the Knicks weren't that good. He never won a ring. This and that. You can. There is a door. You can walk right out of it. All good. Sayonara, go enjoy some other sport. Carmelo Anthony's a no doubt Hall of Famer. The no rings thing is stupid to me because other guys don't have rings and never in the Hall of Fame and are first ballot Hall of Famers. Now, am I going to sit here and say that Carmelo Anthony's a top 10 player of all time? Obviously not. That's not what we're suggesting. But I mean, the accolades, man. I mean, come on, right? NBA All Anniversary, all anniversary team, right? Multiple All NBA selections. Just one of the greatest scorers ever. Again, one of the, if there's anything that he knew how to do at a level that other people, rarely could reach, it's the scoring. It was just so good, right? And again, for it to transform his career, the dude went from a guy who was shooting under 30% from three on under 3 attempts in the first 4 years of his career to one of the best 3-point shooters in the, of his era, right? If you consider volume, the fact that he's a shot creator, not a spot up shooter, right? He could create his own shot. There are so many things Carmelo Anthony did extremely well. Look, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, right? And I get it. With the Knicks, it didn't end the way you wanted it to, right? The Knicks never got to an Eastern Conference Finals. The Knicks obviously never won an NBA Finals or even got there. But how much of that is on him versus how much of that is on, the Knicks for not really having great depth, right? They made the trade for Melo, and, you could have waited till free agency. I understand there was some situations of maybe he was going to go to the New Jersey Nets. It wasn't a guarantee that he was going to go to the Knicks. But, kind of like with Brunson, maybe they could have done a little bit better to entice him. I don't know. But you can't look at a guy not having a ring with his talent level and just blame it on him. There's a narrative that he's some selfish dude. I remember I tweeted, there was this prompt where it was, if you could take a player from your favorite sports teams in the past and put them in their prime on this team, on this current team, who would you choose? And for the Knicks, the obvious answer was Carmelo Anthony, right? That's the guy for in my lifetime it's a no brainer, right? And I saw people saying the selfish nature, he wouldn't, he's not the type of guy you want to help win with winning, right? Put Carmelo Anthony on a team that had, the help that guys around the league have had at his era. That was the birth of super teams. I'm sorry, that Knicks team was not beating Miami, right? Good luck against Bosh, Wade, and of course LeBron James, who's arguably the greatest player of all time. Congratulations, good. Try to beat that, right? Or then later down the road, by the time the Knicks had started to break down and they were gonna get ready to trade Carmelo Anthony, the Warriors prop up. I'm so sure Carmelo Anthony was going to, 1, win the East with nothing on his roster, and then 2, take down Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green. Let's be realistic here, right? Not saying that Carmelo Anthony not having a ring is a good thing. It sucks to have to sit here and say he's one of the greatest players ever without a ring. And I don't think that's just a basketball thing. I think that's in all of sports. He's going to be in that inner circle of best players, best athletes to never win a title. But that's the reality of it. That's the hand he was dealt. And I thought he had an unbelievable career. And I thought, considering all the ups and downs and the weird stuff that went on in New York, I don't think he handled the media that bad, right? There are guys who will handle the media significantly worse given the same circumstances. Obviously we're used to when you think the Yankees, right? Stoic guys Judge and Jeter don't talk, right? They don't give comments to the media. They don't give them quotes. But just because you're not Judge or Jeter with the media doesn't make you bad to the media or a villain or a locker room issue. I don't know what you feel about that, but I feel like Carmelo Anthony as a player, as a person, as a teammate is a lot better than people give him credit for. And he's obviously a first ballot Hall of Famer. If you were to give, I know we're doing report cards. I feel like giving a letter grade here is kind of funny. But if you were kind of to give a letter grade for his time in New York, I think a B+, A- isn't that bad. I know the team success wasn't there, but overall, I felt like he was a very good New York Knick. We can talk about the trade. We can talk about a lot of different factors here. But for his performance in New York, I feel like it was as good as advertised.
Right. So, if you graded the trade obviously didn't work. So the trade would be a very low grade. It's unfortunate the trade didn't work. But for what you got, for Melo's performance specifically, if you graded his performance on the Knicks, strictly his performance, it's an A-, A grade. It's a very high grade. He had some of his best years on the Knicks. He won the scoring title in 2013. Like you said, became a very good perimeter scorer. He brought a lot of good moments to the Knicks at a time where there wasn't much good going around in New York. The Easter game against the Bulls when he hit two clutch shots, 62 at MSG, 50 against Miami in a playoff game on all jumpers. Moments like that, just, moments in Knicks history, making those moments that are very hard to replicate and hard to duplicate and hard to do ever to repeat it. Those are things that Carmelo Anthony was good at doing, and only Carmelo Anthony could do that stuff. At the time, he was literally like one of, if not the best scorer in the entire NBA. This wasn't just like, oh, he's a great scorer on the Knicks. No, he was a all-time scorer, an elite scorer, and like I said, one of the best in the entire league at it. He just did his job. He did his job, and like you said, it's not all Melo's fault because the roster construction around him was just not good. They didn't really give him a proper supporting cast. Imagine if he was still in his prime right now and you paired him with Jalen Brunson. I mean, that would be an insane scoring duo. I think we would be looking at some crazy offensive numbers from the both of them. But unfortunately, that's not the case. Unfortunately, Melo was before Brunson's time, but. It was just a great career for Melo overall. It's a Hall of Fame career to me. I know some people will say otherwise, that it's not a Hall of Fame career, or that he didn't win a ring or an MVP. He wasn't really on successful teams. He shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. He's a Hall of Famer. He is a Hall of Famer, and he's definitely a Knicks legend. I wonder if one day they'll retire his number. I know he didn't really have much accomplishments team success wise with the Knicks, but just overall, just the way he kind of just changed the culture a little bit and just made fans love the Knicks again. I mean, the Knicks were not a very good team up until the Melo trade. People got to remember that. Up until Melo came here, they were not a good team. And I know in hindsight they were not good at, in the long run, even with Melo around, but they still had a few very successful seasons. Fortunately, it didn't result in an Eastern Conference Finals appearance or an NBA Finals appearance, but it was a successful career for him. It's a happy career for him. I know, like I said, we've been saying it all episode. Not everything was sunshine flowers, but very good career for him. And I think Knicks fans should be thankful that they were able to witness that time where Carmelo Anthony was one of, if not the best players in the entire NBA. That's kind of my thoughts on it. What do you think?
Yeah, I think one of the really big things that you mentioned there is just kind of like it sucks to say this, but like, yeah, if you put him on this team, like I'm not saying it sucks to say this because like, I don't want to think about Carmelo Anthony on a current Knicks team, but like, because if you had this front office, if you had this roster, like, man, this team would be really damn good, and I think Carmelo Anthony would have had a legitimate shot to fight for a ring. He played in an era where, unfortunately, there were, again, a lot of super teams, and the Knicks were not very well ran, so combine that together, and you have a situation like this where, yeah, Carmelo Anthony's tenure at the Knicks only resulted in a second-round appearance where the Pacers beat them, right? I'm just thinking about him, like as you mentioned with him, Brunson, right? You would just fill the rest of this lineup really with just as many defense-oriented guys as possible. Throw Grimes in there, maybe you try to get like a 3-and-D type power forward. You could keep Mitch in there, and you don't really care about the spacing because Brunson and Melo, and then of course like a guy like Grimes or Hart, whatever it may be, that would work really well, right? That team would be one of the best teams in the East. That team would have a shot to win the finals every single year. But end of the day, one of the things I think that is really important for us to reflect upon as well is just what he meant to New York, like what he meant to New York Knicks basketball. You mentioned this. The Knicks were bad before Carmelo Anthony was a New York Knick. They were irrelevant, right? They were just kind of like there. They had, they just weren't a good team, right? And Carmelo Anthony brought energy back to New York. Carmelo Anthony made New York basketball fun again, right? And you kind of feel that way around Brunson, where it's like, Brunson kind of came in and now, like, and I understand that the Knicks made a postseason before him, but Brunson kind of symbolizes like change for this franchise. Like, hey, this team won a playoff series with him. This team got to the second round. This team, has kind of accomplished so much already. Whether that means, whether I'm sitting here saying that Brunson's going to have the same career as Melo, I'm not saying that. I think Melo's clearly a more talented player, right? Like, Melo's a first ballot Hall of Famer. I don't think that Brunson has accomplished nearly enough to say that, but, we're kind of at a point where Brunson's entering the point in his career where, like, yeah, you've come to New York, now you've made New York basketball like energetic, fun again. They are a team that they're a must-watch team. They are a team that's put themselves back on the map. And now, will he go the direction of Melo, where it's like, just a fun New York Knick, but it didn't result in a lot of winning? Or will it be, hey, he was a fun New York Knick and it resulted in a lot of winning? Not necessarily meaning, winning a championship, but just being a consistent playoff team, right? That's really the question that's that's left, right? So, I think Carmelo Anthony's career is a great like example of how you can fail a superstar, and how you can fail someone. But in the same vein, like I feel like what he represented for Knicks basketball, like there are a lot of people, like we're similar in age, there are a lot of people around our age that are Knicks fans, and they remember their Carmelo Anthony games. They remember, as you mentioned, those shots against the Bulls. Those are historic. Like, just you remember them, you don't forget them, right? You remember. I mean, I think everyone remembers the this celebration, right? Like, come on, like it's iconic, right? And it's a big part of being a Knicks fan. It's a big part of growing up and falling in love with basketball and all of those things. So I guess kind of one of my last questions I have for you, is if you were to look at like Carmelo Anthony, where does he rank, do you think, all time amongst like Knicks? I mean, I don't think he has an argument for the best, but I think he has an argument to be like in that like Mount Rushmore of Knicks, considering a lack of recent success.
I definitely agree with it, and like I said, I don't think he's the best Nick of all time. No. He's probably not in that discussion. That's like, Walt Frazier, Willis Reed, those type of guys. That's a conversation for those guys. But Melo's definitely like that top 5, that Mount Rushmore area, like you said. Yes, he didn't have much accomplishments other than individual success, but just what he brought to this Knicks team. And, this is a Knicks team that since that 70s time hasn't had many like stars that were really like that good and that elite and just one of the best players in the league up until maybe now, where you have like Randall as an all NBA level player. But at the time, Melo was just, it was like oh my God, we have a good all NBA level player back on the Knicks finally for the first time in God knows how long. It had been like since Patrick Ewing the last time was like that they had someone like that. It had been like 10 years, 15 years or something like that they really had like that guy on their team. So he brought Knicks basketball back to, being relevant, like we've been saying. So, if I were to put him, I don't have like an exact ranking for Melo because he's, it's in a tough squeeze, but I'd maybe put him in the top 5 area. I think that's fair. You got like Frazier, Bernard King, Willis Reed, then you have like Patrick Ewing, and Melo and guys like that. I'm not saying that was my firm top 5, but, just naming off some Knicks legends that he's in that conversation with, and it's just true. Whether you think Melo was a Hall of Famer or not is up to you. It's obvious the trade didn't end up working out in the hindsight, but for what we got during his prime, it was really fun to watch. It was really fun. Didn't have, like we said, didn't have any championships, didn't have much postseason success, unfortunately. Only made the playoffs a couple times out of Melo's years, didn't make it every single time. But, Melo was just that good of a player, that fun to watch as a player. It was refreshing. It was refreshing, and I do think he's in that top 5 area for Knicks of all time. Of course, he's not a top 5 player of all time, but he's already one of the best players of all time. But he's definitely like a top 5 Knick. I would say so. What do you think?
Yeah, no, it's one of those things where like I feel like people don't really understand. Like Carmelo Anthony was an MVP candidate type player. Like he finished 3rd in MVP voting, I believe, on the 2012 season. Right, like. We're sitting here, when we record episodes this offseason, we're going to be talking about hopefully the Knicks can find a MVP candidate because that's what they're missing, right? Guys, it's so hard to find a player like this. Like, we're going to probably be talking about, hey, the Knicks need like a wing type, someone who can space the floor, this and that. Offensive threat helps the Knicks become better offensively because defensively, I think they're good. I think they're fine, right? Carmelo Anthony if Carmelo Anthony was in the league right now, playing for a team that was looking to rebuild, we'd be pounding the desk every single episode. Like, the Knicks need to trade for Carmelo Anthony. The Knicks need to trade for Carmelo Anthony. The Knicks need to trade for Carmelo Anthony. That player doesn't really exist right now for us, right? And again, I guess the thing I want to say, before I pass it off to you is, I just want to thank Carmelo Anthony for giving me a reason to watch basketball as a kid, giving me a reason to want to say, oh yeah, the New York Knicks. Why not? Well, I'm going to watch the New York Knicks, I guess. There is a world where Carmelo Anthony doesn't exist and where there are a lot of Knicks fans who don't fall in love with the New York Knicks at that age and just kind of either become fair weather Knicks fans or just don't care about basketball, right? And that, I think, matters a lot more than people give it credit for. So I think really this is our way. Like, we're talking about a lot of different things with Carmelo Anthony, but I think overall, like, this is what I really want to say is just thank you for making me want to watch Knicks basketball, because when he wasn't there before Randall and Brunson and all these guys got here, there was really no reason to watch this team. And, in a sense, you kind of wish there was that more could have been accomplished with Anthony, but I'm happy with what we got out of him. I'm happy that he was here in the first place, and congratulations on a first ballot Hall of Fame career, on an unbelievable career. So yeah, I want to pass it off to you, and if you have anything else you'd like to say, yeah.
Right. So just like you said, amazing career. You always give him his thanks for what he did as a Knick. I know, times weren't always amazing, but he was a bright spot in an era of Knicks basketball that weren't very bright. So, we appreciate the time he was here for it, and we were happy he was here for the long haul, and he was here through the ups and the downs. He didn't just back out immediately during the downs. He tried to fight through it, but it just didn't work. So it wasn't meant to be. So it was best for at that point to move on. But for what it was worth, when he was here and during the successful times, it was amazing. It was a fun time. Like I said, bright spot in a dark era. So really happy that we got to witness that. And it's just enjoy retirement. That's really at this point for Melo, to enjoy retirement. You had a great career, a Hall of Fame career. One day they will etch your name in the Hall of Fame, and they will the Knicks will one day hopefully retire his number. We will see, but great career, awesome career to witness. There wasn't much at the time in the NBA. There weren't many players like Melo. A lot of guys, embody their game from Melo. They really loved watching him play. They really, idolize him. So it was just awesome to witness, man. It was a really great career. Obviously, like I said, not everything was perfect as a Knick with him here, but there was more good than bad. I don't think many can deny that. Unfortunately, yeah, of course we didn't get a ring, but it was still fun times. It was fun times.
Yeah, no, definitely. And again, end of the day, first ballot Hall of Famer. That is what Carmelo Anthony will be. That's what Carmelo Anthony's career dictates he should be. And I don't care what anyone who doesn't like him has to say. That is what he will be. That is what he is. And I will be definitely very happy when that happens. But with that being said, let us know what you guys have to say about, Melo in the comment section below. What was your favorite Melo moment as a New York Knick, right? How did you feel about his tenure with the Knicks? Again, if you don't think he's I'm going to ask you guys if you think he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, but if you don't, I think you're wrong. There is a right or wrong answer to that question. This is not a debate. But with that being said, thank you guys again for tuning in. You guys have been great with support lately. We appreciate you guys checking us out. Again, we're on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and of course this YouTube page. If you want to listen to the audio version of this podcast, there's Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We are on both platforms. And of course, you guys can check out our personal Twitter accounts. They're above our heads. And we'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.